looked at the storm, and then at the swinging numbers suspended in their clear fluid. She snapped the brass cover shut and examined the fluid in the ship's barometer. If they held a secret, Kincaid couldn't figure it out. All comes down to how long. The wind tore the words away from her mouth, and the other officers gave her the space to think and didn't respond to her comments. She'd taken their input, and the decision was hers alone. Kincaid sympathized with her predicament. She had incomplete information. The lives of her crew and passengers hung in the balance, and the best she could do was fall back on her experience and decide with her gut. If she were wrong, they'd all feel the consequences of the storm's mounting fury. Kincaid fought to hold his balance and maintained firm contact with the bulwark. He closed his eyes and opened his soul to the channels of magic. If they needed information, he could at least try to give the captain something in return for the risks they took. Strength flooded his veins, and awareness of himself, deck, ship, sea state, and storm flooded his soul. With a hint of chronomancer ability, Kincaid anticipated the movement in the waves. With one problem solved, he harnessed another river of energy and thrust his being into the clouds. His body suddenly seemed a distant memory as his mind raced through the canopy of billowing energy. Lightning sizzled and crackled around him, protesting his invasion. Thunder cracked across the cloudy mists, trying to throw him back to the ship below. Winds tore at his clothing, threatening to slam him into the water below. Kincaid was a stranger in this storm's might, and it pulsed with a life of its own. He tried to use his strength to fuel his power, but the foreign energy refused to answer his beckons. Nature was an uncaring force, and it didn't seek him as an ally. He wasn't sure why he gave the weather human characteristics, but it seemed somehow appropriate to personalize his efforts to decipher this storm. Kincaid flung his awareness deeper into the storm, and the weather worsened. Lightning slammed into the ocean's surface, blasting the waves with untold energy. Winds howled and delighted as they chased the tops and whipped them into white tops. The storm's energy intensified and joined the powers of the ocean. Power raged around him, unaware of the human vessel fleeing from its unrelenting path. The storm and heaving seas personified nature's fury. Kincaid and his strength were insignificant against the magnitude of this energy. Why did he even waste his energy against this enormous might? Warmth flowed into his hands somewhere on the ship below. A firm touch clenched his fingers and drove away his uncertainty in the face of the storm. A second presence hovered nearby, warm and fulfilling. But the storm ignored the others. Its hatred focused on Kincaid's intrusion. Regaining his purpose, Kincaid probed the depths of the storm and found the peaceful seas behind the surging waves and billowing clouds. His mind analyzed the range between his far-flung spirit and his anchoring body somewhere in the distance, and he had his answer. A blink later, his mind rejoined with his body. A sheet of rain approached the ship and threatened to soak the sailors aloft in the rigging. Kincaid wasn't an expert, but they had to get them down before losing crew members. 3 days, Captain. The storm will last 3 days, Kincaid said, without a hint of doubt in his voice. Captain Bellota looked up from the ship's compass and raised an eyebrow. She sized up the passenger with a healthy dose of skepticism, but she nodded. Kincaid proved his worth on the trip, and the captain had already learned not to ask questions. She didn't want the answers. Orders bellowed from the quarterdeck to secure the ship to ride out the storm. The navigator had his moment and responded with vigor. They were in for this ride, and each crew member had work to do to last the 3 days in the pounding weather. "How do you know, my friend?" Sholeh asked, her fingers still gripping his hand. Kincaid didn't fool himself with her words. She knew precisely how he determined the length of the storm. "There wasn't another way, and we had to be helpful," Kincaid said. "The captain was already deciding to ride out the storm at sea." She didn't lace her words with accusations or frustration. In some ways, her tone was worse. It was disappointment. "I couldn't just stand by and let Captain Bellota flounder. Not when I could help," Kincaid tried with his best excuse. "Kincaid, since the day I met you, you have always dreamed big. Did you ever think it would be like this?" The fingers released their grip as Sholeh clutched the railing running along the quarterdeck. Her eyes stared up at the storm bearing down on their position. "Like what, Sholeh?" "Power, magic."